Great. All right, so we're at time. I think I'm going to go ahead and get started because this is only a 15-minute demo. So thanks for everybody who's here. We're going to talk today about how we can use Drupal to give our editors the ability to manually curate search results within Solr. So my name is Martin Anderson-Klutz on Drupal.org and Twitter. Various other social platforms. I go by MadClue, and I work at Northern, which was formerly known as Digital Echidna. So the first question you might have is search really that important to my website? And actually, for a variety of users, it really is quite important. So if your site is very technical, then people who land there may not have enough of a domain knowledge to sort of parse out how to navigate to the content that they're looking for. And so quite often they will revert to using site search. Also, you may have visitors who are very task-oriented or transactional. So think about somebody who's been to your site before and saw some content that they want to get back to, but can't necessarily remember how they got there. Or maybe they've been going through a process of looking at different products, and now they've decided that they're ready to buy, and they've come to your site to buy the product that they've seen. But again, they don't necessarily remember exactly the path to navigate there. And so they're oftentimes going to revert to using search as the quickest way to get to that product. This is a tweet I saw recently. I thought it's kind of relevant because what it speaks to is the idea that you can create a really compelling product page. You can write some content that's really helpful. But if the people who are looking for that content can't find it, then it may as well not even be on your site. And so as much as it's important to make sure that the content is really good on your site, also making sure that the people who are looking for that content are able to find it is going to be really, really important. So the next question you may have is, do I really need to offer my editors this ability to sort of manually curate those search results? And there's a couple of answers to that. The first one being that many competing search solutions already offer that out of the box. So if a site was using SwiftType or Cluedo or AdSearch or a variety of others, they would have that capability. And since Solr actually has attributes built in to support this kind of behavior, there's really no reason why we shouldn't offer the same capability through Solr. And then the other answer is that quite often clients want that control. So they may have a subject matter expert who would say, for this top search query that people are searching for on our site, what they really should be seeing as the first result is this white paper we just published that's very authoritative and all of those kinds of things. And sure, maybe over the long term, the solution is to do some relevance tuning or something like that to make sure that the right things are showing up at the top. But in the short term, to sort of close that gap and again, make sure that people are finding the best information available, having a tool like this to act sometimes even as a stopgap could be really, really helpful. So the solution that we're going to talk about today is using this search overrides module, which has been around for a couple of years now. And it really is designed to give editors this capability of being able to specifically choose individual pieces of content to either promote to the top of the results or remove from the results entirely for specific queries. And then not only to be able to choose which results are at the top, but also specifically in what order. And finally, it gives them the ability to do this management directly within the node edit interface. So instead of having to go to some place within the overall configuration menu where they have to remember to go to do this kind of work, if they're working on a piece of content, they can specify specific queries where it should be at the top or excluded and all of those kinds of things. So all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into a demo. So the site that we're looking at is a Drupal 9 site I set up specifically for this demo. Doesn't have a lot of content in there, but a lot of what's here is specifically about zebras. So you can see I've got some different pieces of content that I put in from various sites around the web. Most of it's about zebras, but you can see that when we search zebra, we also get this result for zebra mussels, which may not be one that we want to keep as part of the result set for that query. And for the sake of this demo, let's say that we want this live science result to be our top result. So let's go up to our configuration menu, to search and over to search overrides. And then here we can just say add an override, set our query as zebra. Let's look for some content that we want to promote. Life science was the one we said we wanted to promote. And let's also say that we want to exclude that zebra muscle. So when we save that, it gives us sort of a preview of what's been saved. And then if we go back over here and refresh our results, you can see live sciences at the top, and that muscle result is nowhere to be found. Now imagine that as an editor, I'm going in to edit this particular piece of content. And now we can see over here on the sidebar, we have this capability to manage where or for which queries this particular piece of content is going to be promoted or excluded. So we can say zero, we want that one added as a top result. And suppose that I was adding in a paragraph to the content that sort of mentions in passing the squids. We might say that still doesn't necessarily make it really relevant to that particular query, so we could set that as something to be excluded. And because I know that there's already another node that's being promoted for zebra, maybe I want to go in and sort of manually order those. So I can say, let's move the San Diego Zoo result to the top and save that. And now if we go back to here and refresh our results, now we can see the San Diego Zoo result is at the top. Now, we excluded the muscle result from this particular search. And if we search specifically for muscle, we can see our zebra muscle there. But if we actually change the query to the zebra muscle, then we can see that it's actually showing our zebra promoted results. And the reason for that is that by default, search overrides does kind of a broad matching strategy. So it'll say, if you're promoting results for zebra, then any query that contains zebra, I'm going to apply that to. And that may not work in all situations. And so let's go ahead and change that in the configuration, which is pretty simple. So you just go here and say, only match it if it matches the entire search string. So basically turning off that include strategy. And now if we go back to our search results, you can see it's showing our zebra muscle as we would expect. And just to validate that that hasn't broken what we had promoted for the zebra, you can go back to zebra and see there San Diego is still at the top. One thing I'll mention before we hop out of the demo is that there's also another configuration you can do. So again, out of the box, search overrides defaults to letting you promote nodes. But if you have other types of content in your search index and you want the option to index those other kinds of content, so it might be taxonomy terms, maybe you're indexing users, or even some kind of custom content entities, you switch it to this select from the search index and then tell it which index to use. And then when you save it, that autocomplete is actually doing a live query against your server instead of just doing sort of a title match for nodes. So with that, let's talk about a couple of things related to sort of best practices in using search overrides. So first off, typically you're going to want to use this sparingly. If you do find that you're wanting to override most of the popular search queries on your site, then it probably indicates that you actually really need to do some relevance tuning, or maybe even look at setting up machine learning so that Solr can essentially learn from the results that users are choosing and sort of organically promoting those. As we mentioned, by default, it uses that include matching strategy for the queries, and that may or may not suit some of the use cases that you have, so good to test that. And then also, as we talked about, if you switch to pulling content from the index as opposed to looking for nodes, it gives you the opportunity to promote other kinds of content beyond just nodes. And then the last thing I'll mention is that it does require a version of 4.7 for Solr or newer. So the properties that the module uses are ones that were added to Solr in 4.7. And so if you're using an older version of Solr, then it essentially won't successfully manipulate the results. So I know Acquia recently updated its Solr, and so you can use this module on Acquia. You can obviously use it on any of the hosting services where you have control over the version of Solr, so something like a Platform SH, AWS, Google Cloud. The only holdout that I know of for Drupal, kind of major holdout, is Pantheon is still using an older version of Solr, but you could always use like a search stacks. I think they're actually in the exhibit hall, or you could use like an open Solr or another Solr hosting service. I feel like for most cases, they're probably not going to be too expensive. So the last thing I'm going to mention is a couple of things that are on the roadmap in terms of features that we might add into the search overrides module. So one is the idea of having role-specific overrides. So let's say within your content index is an employee handbook, and you want to promote that as the top result for certain queries, but maybe only for people who are authenticated as staff. Or you might say, I have a product that's going to be launching on May 1st, and there are specific queries where I want that product on day one to always be the top result. And so potentially having the ability to schedule search overrides is something I've also considered. And finally, for that interface where you're actually defining your search overrides and being able to drag and drop the results, I think it works well as it is, but I feel like it might be more intuitive if instead of being a list where you have to sort of manually search out results, if potentially as soon as you put in that keyword, it provided you with kind of a live list of the top results as they are today, and you could drag and drop some to reorder them, potentially click to exclude others, and then maybe manually add to that. But I feel like in terms of a management experience, that might be a better way to go. So hoping to get there in time. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to some discussion. But if you wanted a copy of the slides, you can just go to bit.ly search overrides. All right, and going to look at the Q&A here. Is it possible, how easy it is to set up a search bar separate from your main site search? Okay, so actually, I should read the whole question for the sake of the recording. So Jack has asked, is it possible, how easy is it to set up a search bar separate from your main site search? E.g., if I wanted to set up a search bar to display on a view that just returns a specific content type. So I'm not sure that's really applicable to this particular like module or its implementation, but you can definitely set up, let's say, either a view and have it pre-filtered based on the content type, or you could potentially even set up a separate search index where potentially you could do more advanced things like offer other facets, or have different ways of kind of filtering. You might have conditional facets. I mean, there's a whole rabbit hole of different ways you could approach that. How does search override work on multi-sites websites? So it really depends on a couple of things. I guess number one, how you have the search index set up. So you can have your search index set up so that it will display results across all of the sites. In which case, if you're using it in the default mode where it's only showing nodes, it's only going to show nodes on the site that you're working on. If you wanted the ability to have it show, so suppose that you have your index set up to show results across all of your sites within the index, and you want to promote any of those, then you would need to switch it over to the index mode, in which case you should be able to promote results from the other sites. But the thing to remember is that the search overrides entities that you create are going to be site specific. They're part of that site's content technically. And so promoting it in one site doesn't mean that it's going to be promoted in any of the other sites that are using that same index. So maybe something to keep in mind there. Kyle asked, does the search overrides module work with specific versions of Solr? So yes, as I mentioned before, it will work with anything 4.7 or newer. So the Solr 7 on Acquia Search will definitely work. All right, I think we're at time. Just going to look at the chat here. I will mention again that I go by Manclue on Twitter. So if you have other questions, by all means, hit me up on Twitter, and hopefully we can, answer any other questions there. Could also potentially look at going into one of the hallway track rooms if anybody has other Solr questions, because I see that that there are a variety of questions that are more broadly around Solr search, and would be happy to kind of help where I can. So yeah, I'll jump into one of the hallway track rooms, and hopefully we'll see a couple there. So thanks, everyone.